And y'all.
Excuse me. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Washington 500 Continuum of Care monthly board meeting for the month of May. Happy to welcome everyone here. If there's our lovely Catherine. Pausing just for a second. When you're ready, Catherine, would you mind doing roll call for us?
I don't mind at all. Patricia Sam. Patricia Sam. Tamara Bauman.
Here.
Jaja Floyd. Bella Irons.
Here.
Amaya Lenore.
Here.
Elizabeth Mopin.
Here.
Dorsal Plants.
Here.
Ruby Romero. Present. Martha Sasarosi.
Present.
Christina Sawicki. Christina is here. Victor Liu.
Present.
Amy Thomas. Amy Thomas. I know Jaja was here.
And Patricia's in the chat with
Patricia.
audio issues.
Oh, thank you, Patricia. We have 11 members present and 1 member absent. We have met quorum.
Thank you very much, Catherine. As always, before we do any of our work, we want to ground ourselves and remind ourselves why we're here to do the work. And I believe, Victor, you will be starting off by reading the land acknowledgement.
Great, thank you, Dawson. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Liu. For this work context, I use he, him, his pronoun. The land acknowledgement. The King County Continuum of Care Board acknowledges that we work on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, especially the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, the original stewards of the land, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationship and informed action, and is the first step in honoring the land that we today sit on and their people.
Thank you very much, Victor. And I believe, Tamara, you'll be reading the theory of change.
Yes, and that is, if we create a homelessness response system that centers the voices of people with lived experience of homelessness, then we can focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all.
Thank you very much. Definitely important words to remember as we're gathering here today with everything going on. As we keep moving forward, now would be time for a motion to be in order to adopt the April minutes from the April COC board meeting.
This is Martha Sasarosi, so moved.
Second, this is Amaya Lenore.
Thank you. We have a motion by Martha and a second by Amaya. If we are all comfortable, we'll try and do this with a voice vote just to keep the meeting going. If you are voting to adopt the minutes, if you could come off mute and give me a yes or a yay.
Yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yes. If you are voting against adopting the minutes, if you can come off mute and say no or nay. If you're abstaining from the vote to adopt the minutes, if you can come off mute and say you're abstaining. Okay. The motion to adopt the minutes has not passed.
It has passed, yes.
I heard none of that, so I am very glad to hear that.
Oh, no. Okay. I was wondering what the pause was.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
It was all yeses,
Yeah.
Darcel.
I can confirm that.
That is a lot. I was very confused. I was like, not even abstaining. Like, I don't know what the parliamentary procedure is now. Okay. All right. Ignoring me, I also voted yes if you didn't hear my yes. It's spring, and yeah. All right, we've adopted the motion. Now would be the time on the agenda that we would open up the floor for public comment. Catherine, was there any comments submitted in writing?
No, there were none.
If you are in the attendees and would like to make public comment, we definitely would invite you to raise your hand.
We have a hand up for public comment. Mike, you should be able to unmute.
Thank you. If you can just give me 1 second, I want to pull up the email that I was going to speak about. Bear with me 1 second. Sorry, guys. So it's essentially, I just wanted to bring to the board's awareness just some information that troubled me that I received from an East Side service provider meeting that occurred recently related to updates from our East Side partners, just to bring to your awareness. It sounds like Friends of Youth reported approximately $5.1 million in funding cuts, which impacts around 228 of their clients on the East Side. Mary's Place is temporarily closing a 150-bed shelter on May 4th and closed their Women's Day Center in March. And they're facing a $50,000 freeze on a food grant. A $1 million FEMA grant was pulled from them, but is now being backfilled by the state. McKinney-Vento has seen student homelessness rise from 300 to 700 students, many coming from out of state. And Porchlight is operating under the assumption they will not receive $475,000 in annual funding this year. These are really concerning, reductions in our capacity. And I'm fairly certain that they will have effects that reach far beyond the county. And so I just felt like it was important to bring those to your awareness. That's all.
Thank you, Mike. Those are very stark numbers. Jaja?
I just wanted to say also in the healthcare sector, he has made cuts that will impact folks living unsheltered, That's for the 2026, you know what I mean, but still.
Is there any other public comment right now? I'm asking a second time if there's any more public comment. Not hearing any. I think we can close public comment. Bella, I see your hand. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I feel that it's important to raise the feeling that I'm having from hearing these numbers and this information, and call it out, because I'm feeling an incredible amount of grief right now. And I think that has been largely, I think that has been possibly unknown in a lot of ways, and it's maybe going to continue to be unknown, and that these are going to be waves of information that need to be, acknowledged first and foremost. But I think that it's also very healthy to feel safe in saying that how you're feeling about things like this showing up for us, for our work, for this community, and knowing that we're here and trying to be committed to, this greater work. But it's also very important to acknowledge the human reactions that we're having because of knowing those kind of facts and truths within what it is that we're all here to do. So I just wanted to call that to the forefront because I have a lot of grief showing up for me right now. Yeah. And Mike, I really appreciate you bringing that up because it is important for us to stay focused on how this is starting to show up for us collectively and individually. Thank you.
Oh, Dorsal? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, we were on mute.
I'm wondering if there's a way, and this might be something that we talk more about in a co-chair planners meeting, but like for us to receive a monthly update kind of on like where programs kind of are right now under like I want to do it carefully because I like Bella, I thank you for articulating that because I think grief is like hearing you use that word help, focus on mind, but maybe that's something like a regular update on the state of the services, at least ones that we know are directly tied to our funding. Bella, muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just gonna comment that I do see Mike's hand available, but we did close public comment at this time. However, we do have the COC questions, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
In the queue.
Oh, the Q&A. Please put it in the Q&A and we will be able to address it there. Thank you. Appreciate that. We do have a few hands up in the panelist section. I want to just quickly preface this with, we're going to get some updates here in just a second about this. So if those questions are able to wait until maybe the end of that, so we can actually have a better answer. But if you would like to speak to what it is now, just offering that we'll have this update coming shortly. So Jaja, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just want to say, I hope that with these updates, we come with solutions,
Yep.
you
That's great.
know, as a board, that the solution, what we can do, think about that. That's it.
Thank you, Jaja. Appreciate that. And that's right. Solutions based. Tamara?
Yeah, I think no matter what happens, we need to be building our own ecosystem, a plan B. We need to be creating something on the side because we can't continue depending on the same thing over and over and over again. And so this is why innovation and creativity and collaboration, doing that mutual aid, helping each other to build something up that's better, that's, more enlightened and more social justice oriented and well-being oriented. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Tamara. Yeah, we can always see the silver linings in this stuff, whether how thin they might be right now. Elizabeth?
Yes. I heard Dorsal say we need to pay attention to the things that are related to our funding. We need to be paying attention even to the things that are not directly part of our funding because they all impact the problem that we're trying to address. So we need to be aware of the whole spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. And that, with that kind of leads us into our next section of the conversation, right? We're going to get an update on some of what we're talking about today. And we've got, have you been introduced to the board yet? I don't think so. Everyone, this is Edmund Winters, right? Witter, sorry. And he's the new general counsel here. And so I'm gonna let him introduce himself and take us away, Edmund.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. I assume everybody can hear me adequately.
Everyone can hear? Okay.
Okay. Thanks for the quick introduction. I'm the general counsel for the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. I've been here since January. Before that, I worked on a lot of housing issues. I was the head of the Housing Justice Project for quite some time. So I was asked here to just talk about what's going on with the Federal Continuum of Care Awards and to try to describe what some of the conditions that are being imposed by the federal government are. There's actually some good news and there's some bad news, and we'll start with the good news on this one. So the good news is we have one grant agreement and we've gotten it at the earliest we've ever received it. And typically we don't receive these grant agreements until about July of any given year. And we've gotten our first grant agreement in the end of March when we got it. So record timing, I think in that sense. But one of the reasons probably why that is about 3 days before the inauguration, the Biden administration on their way out announced the awards for the Continuum of Care. And I believe that's the earliest it's ever been done. It seemed like it was probably deliberate, is my guess, because there is some basis if the award was announced, it kind of sort of starts the process of obligating those funds. And so that process was now starting to undergo, and HUD is supposed to issue those grant agreements as they come up. And so we got our first grant agreements, and it's for a transitional housing and rapid rehousing site. Just by way of quick background, I know you're all very familiar with this. We get about $67 million overall in this continuum of care, which encompasses King County. PCRHA specifically gets about $26 million of that. About a larger share goes to King County, and then 5 nonprofits also receive it. What KCRHA specifically receives for the continuum care are programs that are mostly emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, and safe haven. And we also have funding for some administrative things, like, for example, helping with this meeting, and supporting the Continuum Care Board and the convention, as well as HMIS. So that's kind of vested within that 26 million that KCRHA gets. King County actually gets the majority of funding, and most of that goes to permanent supportive housing. KCRHA specifically really doesn't do housing for permanent support housing, although we do have some supportive service grants. And that's going to be really critical here when I get into some of the conditions here for understanding that distinction. So we have gotten our first grant. We're expecting about 26 more, I believe, or 26.
I think we hold 20, yeah, 27 sounds correct.
Yeah, I believe we have 27 grants altogether that KCRHA receives. We received one so far. One good thing is we did also just last week get the full award for the 26 million, which I was a little bit nervous we weren't going to get, but we have gotten it. Want to note we got it last week, but it was dated March 11th, which I thought was interesting because it probably does suggest there was somebody was holding those award letters back. So it's good to see that we were able to get that. And so that does give us hope that at least that $26 million we're expecting for this fiscal year is going to come through. And we are seeing some progress from HUD to start issuing those grants. So that's the good news. We think the money's coming through. We'll see what the next budget comes up with, and happy to talk about that, what we know, which is mostly not very much at the end of this. But we did get the grant agreements, and I think as a lot of you have heard, there's a lot of strange new things in them that we are still trying to get our heads around. So I'm going to go over those really kind of briefly. I'm happy to answer questions the best I can about what they mean. I will just be fully honest with you. Nobody really knows what any of them mean exactly. And so we're doing our best to try to interpret it the best we can, and to be able to, I think, kind of our interpretation at this point is that we don't believe there's going to be huge changes to programs, but I think it really does matter how you look at it. So But so some of the things that have come up in the new grant agreements that are new here, number one is it prohibits the use of funding to promote, quote, gender ideology. It doesn't define what that means. I think if you've been following the new administration, there have been, one of the first things when President Trump came into office is he signed a order that was titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truths in the Federal Government. The use of the term gender ideology was used throughout that. It's again very vague with it. I think that you can read it, you kind of get a sense of what they're targeting here, which is potentially maybe some trying to limit the use of, say, transgender or recognition of transgender rights. The odd thing I'll just point out to you from a legal perspective here is that despite what the executive order wants to do, which is limit recognition of transgender rights, I think that's what it seems to do. Federal law also still prohibits discrimination against people due to transgender status. So, so that's again a bit of an odd thing here. Is it's sort of to some extent the grant agreement seems to suggest it's sort of in conflict with federal law. Again, this is sort of one of the issues that's coming up in I think every jurisdiction that's looking at it. Among the other things in it, it has funding that's supposed to funding is not supposed to be used to promote elective abortions, which is related to the Hyde Amendment. Again, this is not I would say not something that comes up in the case of continuum of care as far as housing concerned. And then it also has another thing about no funding will be used as part of to violate any anti-discrimination laws. Just note, you're not allowed to discriminate anyways. So in some ways, it's not really a big change. Although, again, I think the current administration has a very different idea of what discrimination might mean compared to prior ones. So we don't know exactly what that means. Probably the biggest change that I will say is it invokes a lot of federal restrictions on immigrant access. So about 30 years ago, there was a law that was passed during the Clinton administration called the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. It was a large welfare reform. And what that law did, among other things, was restrict immigrant access to federal benefits. There's a lot of nuances to it, but I will just say in general, if you're somebody who's undocumented, you do not have any status, you're not supposed to, under this law, access any type of federal benefit, generally. But there was a lot of exceptions within the law. There was a lot of legal requirements in order for it to be enacted. But the grant agreement seems to suggest that they want recipients of this funding to start restricting access to persons who would not qualify under this law. Now, one thing I said earlier today is that a lot of the programs KCRHA runs are emergency shelter, emergency programs. One of the things about that law is it exempts emergency programs necessary for life and safety from its restrictions. So if you're running an emergency shelter, even under this federal law, you are allowed to serve somebody who's undocumented, for example. It doesn't restrict that. So in some ways, this doesn't seem to have a large impact on a lot of the programs we're dealing with. At least that's not our current interpretation. It would suggest that. However, if programs that run something like permanent supportive housing, which is a bit of a different status, it's longer term, potentially those programs might see a little bit of, have to think about this a little bit more critically. Don't put money into this. It's not an issue that really comes up from our perspective necessarily. One other thing too that's also coming up within the grant restrictions is it requires us to use a program called SAVE. That's a program that has been established by, it's a federal database that basically has information about anybody who's ever entered the country with an immigration status. So it's asking for any recipient to use that program to determine someone's immigrant status and ultimately determine if that person would qualify for the service. A lot of exceptions to this. One thing I'll just note here, SAVE is a highly restricted database. Only 12 entities in the state of Washington have access to it. It's very restrictive. There's a lot, I mean, it has a lot of personal information. One other thing too, I'll just note too, is that two very large groups do not show up in SAVE. One is somebody who's undocumented, so if you came to the country without any status, but also if you were born here, that is, you're a naturally born citizen, you are also not going to show up in SAVE. So one problem that can come up with that is if a program has to use that and somebody doesn't show up in the program save, it can mean that the person's undocumented, doesn't qualify for the benefit, or is the person with a natural born citizen, they were born here in the US, and they should qualify for the benefit. But having to kind of separate those out has not been particularly, but we don't know. One thing I'll note is King County and a number of other jurisdictions have brought a lawsuit against this to try to stop these conditions. They're actually having a hearing as we speak on the status of that in federal court about whether these conditions should be stayed at this point. There's a lot of questions regarding what these conditions mean. That's kind of the crux of the lawsuit, because it's hard to know what anybody who's receiving these funds has to do. And that's the big question here. Obviously, we're still trying to deal with as we assess what this means for the programs. What does this mean for ultimate providing services that are needed? So there's a lot of information. I'm happy to talk about this a little bit more and answer any of your questions.
Yeah, and I also wanted to acknowledge that Kelly Kinnison, the CEO, is on the call as well. And we were gonna hear a CEO update as well. I just didn't get to that portion yet, and I'm so sorry about that. Kelly, did you want to give an update before the question period?
I'm happy to have Ed take questions on federal funding. And I can jump in, and then if there's time, co-chairs, I have prepared just a little overview of our authority work plan. But if we're out of time, then I can hold that for another time.
No, I don't see any issue with carrying on with that. Yeah, please fill us in.
All right. So we are presenting our draft KCRHA authority work plan to the governing board, and I wanted to give you all a little preview. A lot of this comes from feedback that you've given KCRHA and the staff that you work with, and other learnings that we have from all of you. This is a high-level roadmap, I would say, to how we will sort of prioritize our activities this year. It's focused on how we will use our administrative resource, right? So it's not talking about any changes to program funding. It's just really like how our staff is building the system that we all rely on for emergency response. One of the things I did to sort of get my head around this, doing it for the first time, was list out all of our operating requirements for myself. And it was pretty surprising, I have to tell you. So many of you know we operate under an interlocal agreement. Of course, you all know that we have requirements from HUD as the host of the Continuum of Care. We also have a 5-year plan that we need to work on and provide updates to the board and the community on. We have our master service agreements with the city and the county. We have state requirements as we had received commerce funding for our right-of-way program. We get a tiny amount of philanthropic funding, which comes with its own requirements. And then, of course, we are not, as you all know, a department of the city or county. And so we have to do things like pay our light bill and keep Microsoft Word working and do benefits for employees, like sign them up for their health insurance. And so it's quite a lot that this agency is required to do to keep the lights on. We looked at our administrative funding for the year, which is an average across all our funding sources of about 8%. So that's really pretty lean for those of you involved on boards of nonprofits and other types of organizations. An 8% admin is really quite lean, especially for the regional coordination work that we would like to be doing. So I'll be highlighting that for our board. I also did our implementation board, before they were sunsetted, had asked me to do what's called a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I thought that was a great tool to use to sort of get us oriented to where we had opportunities and strengths to build on, and also where we needed to make sure we were sort of supporting the agency and our operations. So that will be in the report. I'll just, by way of highlight, I think having our executive leadership team fully seated in either interim or permanent roles is really important. As many of you know, I think James Rouse, our CFO, was sort of holding down KCRHA by himself. He was a contractor, and we had someone on loan from the county when I arrived. So having full-time KCRHA employees nearly seated in all of those roles is really, really important to the stability of the organization. So we have staff who have exceptional expertise and have been working with you all for a very long time. And we've been doing a lot to support those staff and hear their concerns and just sort of build out an organization that supports them, develops them, and communicates well about the resources available to do this work. In terms of weaknesses, I think the number of contracts that we manage, given the number of staff that we're able to employ to do that work, is really out of sync. And so we're taking some steps to address that. I know any service providers in the room will be happy to hear that. We've heard you loud and clear. I think just some of the basic things that organizations have, like documents that explain how we do our key functions and whose job is it to do X, Y, or Z. We're working slowly to get those in place. And I think it's where we have them, it's really changed the way that we communicate internally and externally and the ways that we work together. And we have a really long way to go still. And that includes everyone from me down to everyone who's working with all of you every day. Those are sort of the internal pieces. So thinking about externally, we have a number of opportunities, I think, to strengthen partnerships with this board, with our communities, and make sure that you're part of our planning and decision-making processes as best we can. We've started that work, and I think this board has really been helping lead the way in showing what role they have in the system and how we can all work together. And I really appreciate that partnership. The biggest threat is what you just heard about, right? The funding environment. And that's the federal funding environment, but of course, also our state and local funding environments are really challenging. You know, as a new CEO, I am always challenged, right? Like, what are the wins? Like, what are you going to do? What are the, how are you going to increase the metrics? And I've been really honest with folks saying, if we can hold our system harmless, if we cannot have beds go offline, if we cannot lose services in this environment, I think we need to count that as our win in this environment, given what's going on. And we should be building that system so that when we have other opportunities, we're ready to take those. So in terms of the actual work plan priorities, these have been pretty consistent since I did my initial assessment arriving and spent my first 60 days just listening to you all and to the staff. So we know we need to make on-time payments to our providers. We know we need to think about any opportunities to bring in additional resources to the system, whether that's new dollars, new partnerships, and things like that. We want to increase the regionalism conversation and get more regional buy-in and a better understanding of what regionalism means at KCRHA and throughout the King County area. We want to create an exceptional workplace. I think it's really hard to do this work and not have an organization that's supporting you and that understands what you need to execute that work. That's something I've worked on in many of the places that I've worked before. And so, foundationally, it's understanding those roles, responsibilities, and giving people a clear sense of the resources they have to do their job. And then finally, just continuing that drive to be a trusted partner in this space. We know there have been lots of up and downs. We've, thought about those a lot together. We've thought about those a lot internally. I continue to seek feedback on how we're doing, and we continue to kind of pivot or, adjust as we are learning and growing alongside you. And we hope that that builds the trust that we need to do this work together every day. So I think there's a little more detail in the actual plan, which I'll be able to share soon. We hope that our governing board will provide input and make sure that we have their support for the activities that we've outlined, and really would love your feedback. And especially as we think about, doing a work plan every year, we want to get on more of an annual cycle where we're presenting that early in the year. And so any thoughts or questions that you have, I would welcome.
Thank you so much for that update, Kelly. Yeah, I'm going to turn the floor over to any questions, and I see a gaggle of hands. So let's go ahead and start with Elizabeth. I think I saw your hand shoot up first.
Okay, I think last time we had some information about the coordinated entry system, and it seemed like they were in the process of looking at how they prioritize in this strange and new environment. And I wondered, is there a prioritization tool in place now? And with that, how are individuals selected for openings, and what do you do with the people who aren't selected?
Thanks for that question, Elizabeth. My understanding, as I've learned about coordinated entry, is that really one of the biggest drivers of prioritization is length of time that someone has been unhoused. I think that does a couple of things that the experts, in the community and on our team have been talking about, and I think the team has also talked about, what are the ways that we connect with people looking for services. Coordinated entry, right, is a really important one. And I think in the work plan, you'll see a few initial steps to start addressing, the feedback that we get regularly about coordinated entry. But we also need to map out in our system, what are the pathways to services if you're not someone who's been living outside for, 5 years or, I think the length of time is quite substantial given the resources in the system. So all those questions are on our plates to start grappling with this year, and would love to have you as a partner.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bella. I think you're next.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you've been doing and that you're bringing, Kelly. I really appreciate hearing from you and having this opportunity to see this report and build these connections. You had mentioned at the end of your discussion here about being able to contact you. And I think it's really important to help people understand how to be able to contact you when especially when this report is produced. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bella. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. No, Kelsey, I was just wondering if someone can put the KCRHA inbox email in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on, and we're good on time, just so people, in case people were wondering. Dorsal, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Let me start by saying thank you for being here and giving us some of your time. I guess kind of tying into Bella's question, like the info at KCRHA, in my experience, has not been the best route to provide feedback. And what I heard and what I believed, in your words, that we wanted to have a collaborative process, or at least you wanted to have the ability to hear from us. So one, I wanted to confirm that we would be receiving the work plan at a time where it's still in draft, so that there would be an opportunity for us to provide feedback. And while you are incredibly busy, and I wouldn't expect you to necessarily put your direct email in the chat, I'm wondering if maybe there's a way that we can collaborate more directly on that topic than the info line. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you all, communicate with Kelsey, and other folks. They bring your, concerns, experiences, up to our meetings regularly. If you want to, speak to me, we can absolutely get you to our scheduling person. I will say these kinds of meetings are a little bit better because they're regular. I carve out, the time. Getting on my schedule can be a little bit bananas these days. Just being real, right? But if you have specific, like if the info at KCRJ, like I've had several come to me today. So if you do flag it as like, work plan, then we make sure it gets to the right person. And then eventually, if it's for me, it gets to me. So it's just a way to make sure that someone is accountable to addressing those emails. And I apologize if you've had a negative experience in the past. But you can always rely on Kelsey to hunt. She's like down the hallway from me, so you can rely on her to come hunt me down. And I think, we need to have our regular meeting cadence, Dorsal and Ruby. I don't know where that stands right now, but
we only met once and never
Right.
established a follow-up meeting.
yeah, I think the idea was maybe a quarterly meeting. So I'm still very open to that. And we'll absolutely carve out that time. And I really appreciate this cadence we have of me coming to the COC meeting and you all coming to our governing board meeting, which you'll be doing in June. And I really appreciate. So maybe in advance of that is a good place to really dig into that report and anything else that you'd like to talk about. And I encourage COC members to like filter information up to Ruby and Dorsal and feedback. They're very direct with me about where things stand. I can guarantee you have good advocates in them.
Thanks for that, Kelly. Appreciate that plug there. I also want to say that we are meeting with executive team as well, I believe. So like if there's any concerns that people have, we can bring it to them as well. And that's a weekly meeting too. And so thank you so much for that. Jaja, I see your hand. Are you ready to ask your question?
First of all, thank you so much, Ruby, for acknowledging me. My name is Jaja Floyd. And Dr. Kinnison, I was just reading about a lawsuit that King County is in with Snohomish County and Pierce. Do you know much about that and where that stands right about now?
Is this the one related to the continuum of care funding with HUD? Or okay, there's a lot of lawsuits. Is Ed still on and able to take that? Great.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more about that. And I'm happy to kind of answer all more questions about the continuum of care. But if there's any other questions for Dr. Kinnison too, I would like to people space for that. But I'm happy to Jaja answer your question too after this.
I don't see any other hands. Is there any final questions for Kelly?
I'm sorry, Ruby. I just want to also thank Kelly. I appreciate you. I appreciate your leadership and what you're bringing to the RHA and how smoothly it seems to be running now. I mean, we all got a lot of work, and we're always going to be continually improving, you know what I'm saying? But I just do want to give you kudos for what you've done so far. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's great to see you.
Second that. Seems like you're making a lot of progress there. So thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that. Thanks for coming today and giving an update.
Thanks, Ruby. It's a big team effort, and a lot of that is driven by what you all bring to the system in your expertise and pushing us to be better and do better for our unhoused neighbors. We can't do this alone, right? We have to do it together.
Yeah, it's out of love. We push out of love. Edmund, did you want to go ahead and take that question?
Yeah, so the question is about the King County, Snohomish, and there's actually about, I think about 8 for 9 jurisdictions and cities across the country, including New York City, Boston. We have filed a lawsuit against the federal government regarding the continuum of care restrictions. That they filed it just the other day. They have a hearing right now about whether the terms that I was just describing earlier in the meeting, whether those should be unenforced for the time being until a judge can decide whether they are enforceable at all. And so at this point, we're seeing what goes on with that lawsuit. And ultimately, King County Regional Homeless Authority, our organization, is still just weighing our options and understanding what all these at this point.
Does that answer your question, Jaja, for now?
For now, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate you.
And Dorsal, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you for your portion of the presentation. I had just a follow-up question for your piece as well. You mentioned that there were some exemptions based off of life and safety. I was wondering whose definition of life and safety would that be? Would that be KCRHA, HUD, state? Just because there's been a lot of debate around that, at least at the state level recently.
Yeah, that's a good question. Under the federal law, it's the US Attorney General who decides what would fall into the exception. So back in 2000s, I think it was one of the outgoing things under the Clinton administration. It might have been under the Bush administration. The Attorney General did issue some guidance that talked about what kind of programs would be exempt from this restriction on not being able to serve persons who are undocumented or don't qualify for immigrant status. So like, for example, soup kitchens. They're allowed to serve anybody regardless of their status, and frankly, it would be very onerous if they had to determine that. Other examples were just like emergency shelter, things that were necessary for life and safety. Back in 2016, it was like one of the last things, Loretta Lynch, who was the Attorney General under the Obama administration, she issued some guidance too that was a little bit more specific to housing and talked about how continuing care programs and specific ones that might be are potentially available or could use this exception. HUD has also issued some guidance as well, and almost a lot of the continuum care programs that HUD described were they considered exempt under this, so that they could be able to help anybody. That's basically what we rely on. Now, there's a lot of interpretive guidance though to kind of get deeper into your question that we have to make about the programs, but ultimately it's really up to the U.S. Attorney General office.
Thanks for that. Bella, I saw your hand pop up.
Yeah, thank you. Following on that vein, I'd like to look further into these lawsuits that are being described here and this historical perspective of what's led to some of this and the language. Is there a way to know where to be able to track these lawsuits besides the Washington Attorney General? Do they have like a codex?
Yeah, there's one lawsuit that's filed right now on this. I can try to send the case number to Kelsey or the co-chairs to at least send it right out so that you'll have it. And that way you can track it on the website and you can just see what all the filing with court orders will say.
That'd be great. I look forward to that. Last question before you go. Did you want to give I saw a question in the chat that popped about the SAVE program. Can we get a quick synopsis of that again? Really?
Yeah, so SAVE it's a program that's been around for a long time. It was created, I think, in the mid-80s during the Reagan administration. And it's a program that's supposed to just track basically immigrant status. If someone's entered through a port and has a visa or gone through inspection in some way and has been given entry or lawful entry into the country, this is what tracks it. SAVE is the system that does it. It's now an electronic system. It's maintained by the USCIS, which is just sort of a general immigrant warehouse and processing center for the federal government. I'll just note, when it was created back in the 1980s, it was specifically prohibited from using its information in it for immigrant law enforcement or immigrant enforcement. So information that's contained in it is not supposed to be used by any type of enforcement agency, which is, in this case would be ICE, in order to do it. So the SAVE program, though, it's kind of evolved over the years. It's used a lot in like food stamps or agencies that process food stamps, Medicaid. Public housing authorities use it. So the Homelessness Authority of KCRJ is not a public housing authority, but something like Seattle Housing Authority, King County Housing Authority, when they are working with public housing, that specific program, public housing, they're required to use SAVE, so they will have a subscription to it. And there are some other HUD programs like HUD multifamily housing that also is required to use it. But it's never been implemented really outside of that as far as the housing sphere. So other programs just haven't used it, like Continuum of Care, other HUD grants besides some public housing and multifamily housing, have never had to use it before. And again, like I said kind of earlier, it's a very restricted program. There's a lot of training involved. You know, the grant agreement purports to suggest you would have to like start using it, but the reality is getting access to it can take a very, very long time. And so no agency is really prepared to do this. One of the things I'll just note too is like nonprofits themselves, to the extent that they are doing any work with federal benefits, whether it's running a soup kitchen, whether running a housing, they're specifically exempted from ever having to use a program like this. So like something like if you have a permanent supportive housing provider who's a nonprofit, they are very clearly exempted from ever having to check immigrant status based on federal law. And the grant conditions under the Continuum Care Grant we got kind of nod to this. They don't say it explicitly, but they do sort of suggest that you're aware of this, and that they cannot compel a nonprofit or basically a nonprofit any agency from having to use a program like this. In fact, it would be extremely onerous because that system doesn't tell you whether somebody qualifies for the benefit, it just tells you the immigrant status. And it's really hard to know whether somebody qualifies unless you know a lot about immigration law and also know a lot about this specific law and who it allows and who it doesn't allow. It's very complicated analysis. And frankly, it's going to be very difficult for an agency to implement.
Interesting. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And not to rush us along, but if there's no further questions, I'm going to take us into, and thank you so much for coming today and giving us that update. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. And I think we're going to go into the boards and committee updates. And today we're going to do the charter review, the convening work groups, NOFO, and the co-chair planning meetings updates. So I think, Victor, are you going to start us out with the charter review update?
Yes, I can. So for the charter revision work group, as you know, that we held this first in-person kickoff meeting on March 28th. And as you all know, that I'm the liaison for this work group with the members that are participating. And we had our second hybrid meeting on April 18th, and also another optional working meetings to work on a charter on April 25th. And the meetings will continue to be held monthly with the goal of completing the revision by September 2025. The revised charter, as you know, will be then presented to the COC board in October 2025, followed by a presentation at November 2025 convening. And like similar past years, then votes will be tallied, and then the membership will vote on what has been recommended for revision.
Thank you for that update, Victor. Looks like we're making good progress on that, and I'm glad to hear a timeline. That's exciting. Does anybody have any questions for Victor about the charter revision work group? Okay. Not hearing any. If you have any that pop up later, just go ahead and throw it in the Q&A. Next would be the convening work group. Did we have an update for the convening work group? It's also Victor. Also Victor, take him away.
It's the Victor show today. I'm just kidding.
It is.
But for the convening work group, I also want to acknowledge that Elizabeth as well as Christina are also part of the members that are assisting with the planning for the convening meeting as well. And so the convening will be held on June 17th, and I believe it's going to be from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at North Seattle Community College. Is that correct? No?
3
Oh,
p.m.
wishful thinking on my part, so that they have the 3 p.m. a longer day. And agenda has been preliminary set, and then we'll be sharing them as soon as we finalize the details. And yeah, not much to update around there. There's going to be a presentation. I'm blanking out on the name of the organization that we're presenting. Can somebody help?
Yes, yeah, pathways to housing.
Halfway to Housing will be doing a pretty thorough presentation on that day. And then also I will be doing another charter revision brief update on that meeting as well. But more planning to come. But it's coming, it's very close. Essentially, it's next month on June 17th. And it's also a hybrid meeting as well.
Thanks for that. And really quickly, before moving on, I wanted to say thank you to Kelly for coming today as well. We did get a great update from her. And I just didn't want to miss my chance to say thank you, Kelly. So thanks.
Thanks, Ruby. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to listen for as long as I have, if that's okay, but feel free to kick me off if you want to.
All right, guys, be on your best behavior. So the next section, the next update we're going to hear is about the NOFO work group. So, there's NOFO in there.
Yes, that's me.
I believe that's the COC manager here, Kelsey.
Yeah, so each year we have a NOFO work group that helps to support the work of the NOFO, looking at local values, rating and ranking, as well as new applications and renewal processes. We are aiming to get a work group stood up. So we'll be asking our COC board members and COC members to contribute to that. We'll be sending out a call for interested parties in the next week, basically. The FY25 NOFO process is likely quite truncated. Because it was a biannual process, we don't have to do the large renewals or the collaborative application. We are not aware if there are new funds for fiscal year 25 to apply for. Forecast tells me it's quite unlikely there will be new funding available. So the aim of that work group is really going to be focused on preparation for fiscal year 26. Both to be reviewing the rating criteria. We've got quite ample time to do a much more detailed review of our local rating. And just be kind of really prepared to proactively respond to the fiscal year 26 NOFO competition. So that will be commencing to gather a work group together shortly.
Thanks for that update. And I can attest that that was one of that work group was something that I felt I got a lot out of. It felt like a really good work group to be a part of. And so I encourage the membership and board members to join that work group when it's set up. The next update is going to be from Dorsal on the co-chair meetings if he's available. Or I can do it too, but.
Did we lose?
Oh, we might have lost Dorsal. That's okay. I can.
Oh, he's in the attendees.
Oh.
I am elevating him.
My apologies. There he is. Confirming Dorsal's back on the panelists.
Okay, I think that
There
worked.
he is. We can hear you.
Ruby and I decided to add the co-chairs planning meeting to updates because there's a significant amount of work that not just us, but other board members do, and not everyone gets to participate, and also KCRHA staff, Kelsey and Catherine. So a couple of just quick updates from that meeting. We planned out the agenda for this meeting. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not we were going to hold an executive session in regards to being able to discuss the meeting. There are a couple of different factors that led to us being in a situation where it wasn't required and we didn't meet the legal requirements for that. The goal was transparency, so talking in public ended up being, we got the information that we needed. I think the other big thing was coordinating with the KCRHA staff not just Catherine and Kelsey, but in this case, Daniel and Jeff, along with SBC co-chairs, Bella, and a shout out to Marvin, who is doing some amazing work supporting Bella. I believe you all at this point have received the update, but the charter has different guidance for our committees and work groups leadership structures, which I think is confusing. I have high hopes that the charter work group is going to look at that, particularly in an area. We had somebody that was working really wonderfully with Bella and doing some amazing work. And my understanding is he's still there and still contributing in meaningful ways, but it'd be better to not have to look in different sections of our charter to know what leadership structures for our meetings are. So happy to answer any questions, or if I missed anything important that we're working on, Ruby, feel free to let me know I missed it.
Yeah, I would just mention that, oh no, it escaped my brain. We did something else too, didn't we? Oh yeah, we're doing the, we're gonna have we're in conversation with the external affairs about getting the COC to have a section on the newsletter that goes out monthly. So we can, you know, give updates to our membership and others that are not involved in the COC work. And that's going to be a really crucial and exciting thing to do. So I think we're starting with like an introduction, and then the next one, we're gonna give some information. So any collaboration on that with other board members, they have something they want to get put out onto this, please let us know, and we will do that. I saw Jaja's hand pop up.
Yeah, just for clarity purposes, Ruby. Now, our COC body membership, they're able to work on any of our committees. Is that correct?
Yeah, the committees and work groups, absolutely. Yeah, we encourage it. Mhm.
They're just not always allowed to be in the leadership structure, which is confusing, because some of our committees do allow for a COC member, personally speaking, rightfully so, to serve as one of the two co-chairs.
But yes, they can, yeah. I think that would be it for our, anything that popped in my brain. Did we miss anything from our planning? I don't think so. Okay. Cool. Oh,
Wait,
Bella.
did you talk about the PIT?
So we're gonna, thank you. That actually, really quick, now that you brought that up, and I saw Bella's hand and Elizabeth's hand pop up, but the updates that we're gonna be doing now is kind of like transitioning. So we don't want to go through every single work group every single month. If there's not an update, we're gonna leave it off and do written updates. Which maybe some of you did receive the template for that to provide an update, and we would ask that we do that for all updates in general.
And the updates were sent out with the board meeting materials.
Okay, and we did get those, yeah, in the board meeting, so maybe there's an update there, but I don't think there's much of an update.
It wasn't an update yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's an update there yet. Shoot. Thank you, Jaja. And then, all right, I saw those two hands. Now, Bella, yours popped up and then went back down. So do you want to go first, or do you want, is it Elizabeth could go first?
I can go
Okay.
quickly.
All right.
Because there was a mention of meeting with Daniel. I wanted to flag that we have had a lot of difficulty hearing Daniel because of technical difficulties. And I hope that someone is working on that, because his input is really valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that, yeah. We love having Daniel. We'd love to hear him too, so. Bella, did you have a question?
Yeah, just to clarify, with this shift in how updates, are being requested moving forward, if we would like to make an update on the agenda, do we need to flag the information that we're sending to Catherine for the written update, and to make sure that it's raised that we would also like to verbally provide an update during the meeting?
Yeah, I think we haven't quite worked out that process, but I think that's a great idea, and how we would do that be definitely if there's votes that occurred, and, you know, any impact, like any reports any reports that you received. And I think we'll send out those guidelines again, and I think there maybe is a little bit on there about what we'd like to hear about. So, but thank you for raising.
Yeah, of course. And I would like to verbally then provide an update for the SPC right now. And the notes are there that I provided to Catherine for our last meeting in April. But we did vote in a new SPC member. And we also have a new possible SPC member being reviewed to discuss and vote in May coming up as well. And also the communication that Dorsal alluded to about that I'm the co-chair at the moment. And I do want to let you know that I have heard and communicated with Marvin. And he was very grateful for the letter and the communication that went out. If I can speak on his behalf, we talked about that. And yeah, so hopefully everybody's received that. And he is very much still involved and assisting. And I'm extremely grateful for that. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that he is still there. And we are moving forward with our regular weekly communications and meetings. And yeah, so it's going very well. And thank you for this time to be able to provide that information.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for that, Bella. It's great to hear the movement there. So, and speaking of movement, we're going to move us right along into our break. And so it's 3:06 right now. We'll be back at 3:11, give or take. And then we'll get started on our next segment of the agenda. But thank you guys for those updates, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Wicked. Yeah. Okay.
You're also, no one's wicked. No one's hurt. That was a lot. We're just joking.
I was taking you to here.
Right. I know, I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
I'm just trying to keep the energy going, that's all. You make me giggle. That's
Well, on the note of keeping the energy going, we'll go ahead and call ourselves back from our break here at 3:12 p.m. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you're back. Still seeing screens, but we'll keep moving along. So we are on the part of the agenda now where we will talk about potentially making a motion to have a special meeting to hold COC membership recruitment conversations. At our last monthly meeting, there was a decent number of public comment talking about concerns around the status of some of our boards and committees, the status of where the COC board itself is in recruitment, and the status of COC membership recruitment. There are a number of committees or work groups that still need not COC board members, but need COC members to be able to be effective. The one that I would call out gently is the COC convening work group. Convenings are one of the most important things that we do. They are a HUD required component of our work. We have received constant feedback that we need to do more convenings, we need to do them in person, and we need to create real networking space. We have some wonderful people on that team. I know it's not just Elizabeth, but she just popped on screen, so she's fresh in mind. I think Victor is our other convening. Yes, can't leave Victor out. And Christina.
Yes, and Christina.
So that's 3 board members, but correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, but we're still at 0 COC members for that group.
That's correct. That is correct.
Yeah. There's a lot going on. There's also, one of the symptoms of grief. Thank you for starting us out that way, Bella. One of the symptoms of grief is hopelessness, helplessness, that sense of being able to do nothing. So why do anything? And so if we want to have that discussion, it's going to take us, I think, more time than just a quick 10-15 minute discussion here in one of our normal meetings. And so that is why we wanted to potentially throw out the option to hold a special meeting. Elizabeth, I see your hand.
No objection to that.
Would you be willing to make a formal motion to hold a special meeting?
I move that we hold a special meeting focused on expanding the involvement of the membership.
And this is Jaja, and I'd like to second that motion.
All right, we have a motion from Elizabeth and a second from Jaja. I'll go ahead and, is there any?
Point of order. Point of order. Can we have a more clear, statement of the motion for Catherine to document?
Thank you. Elizabeth?
So Elizabeth, on the agenda, it does say something about COC membership recruitment. Maybe we
Yes.
could make the motion about that.
Yes. I would move that we gather to expand the membership recruitment for the membership at large, as well as for specific work groups, committees.
And this is Jaja. I second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Parliamentarian Ruby. Is there any discussion on the motion, knowing that I've abused chair privilege on this already? Martha.
Thank you. Yes, this is Martha Sassorsi. I am interested in, just to be clear, that conversation also including recruitment for additional board members? And wondering if that can be, if folks would agree that that could be an intentional part of the conversation as well. And so I can, if the question is about, I can make a formal proposal to amend the motion. If that, if we feel like it's distinct enough that it needs to be clear in the motion. Would that be helpful?
As much as I love, yeah.
And say otherwise, if it's generally considered within the realm of what has been expressed, then great, we can proceed.
Let's have it as a motion to amend, because there might be conversation separate to that.
And so I welcome feedback on the phrasing, but I move to amend the proposed agenda to include recruitment for COC board membership as well.
That's a friendly amendment.
I'll count that as a second for the purposes here. Although our lawyer or our on-loan lawyer left, I hope somebody stop me if I'm breaking Robert's rules. Bella,
Well,
you have.
I thought that Elizabeth made the motion, so the amendment to the motion, Martha can ask to have it amended, and then Elizabeth needs to amend her motion. Is the way I thought it's supposed to go.
Do we vote on the amendment?
I will accept that amendment if that's the proper procedure.
Okay. I'm seeing Catherine. I'm trusting Catherine.
And I will accept,
correct.
and I will second that amended motion. This is
Okay.
my job.
We are having discussion on the amended motion now. Bella, I think you have your hands up. Or
Yeah, thank you. If we're going to amend this motion for specifics, then I feel called to say that there needs to be a discussion on this because the charter is already having quite a few issues and I'm dealing with that myself right now. And I think that there is a precedence for making sure that our charter is clean and that we do not move forward with particular items, especially specifics around things, until we have a clearer understanding of what they're going to be moving into. That's my request. So I would move that the amendment also takes a look at how specific we're getting right now, because I do not see that our charter is able to stand and support necessarily what we're requesting. Thank you.
thank you, Bella. I think Victor's hand was next, and traditionally we only have 2 people speak for and 2 people against a motion, unless we have a different rule. Victor, I'm going to go with you.
Wait, thank you so much. I just want to respectfully respond that for the membership recruitment, it's actually already been revised in the previous last charter revision group when I served as the liaison. So I want to reiterate that it's clear. It was voted on in the convening. So I just want to clear up that there's no confusion around that. The motion here right now that is suggested for an amendment is around membership recruitment, specifically also for board members and membership. So I don't want us to have this discussion that the membership recruitment is not clear. That was already voted on.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry. Sorry, Dorsal, I didn't mean to jump ahead of you there. I was gonna quickly just reference that it's not so much about the decision-making of bringing on board members, it's about the charter as a whole and kind of like bringing someone into a position with a charter that isn't fully written or very needs work and which we're doing is the only thing that, since the board is kind of, you know, like literally chartered by the charter to do the work. I just want to make sure that we are on the same page there. But of course, I'm not against bringing on new board members. We do have spots available, but just kind of, you know, that question as we go is something that's staying at the forefront of my mind. Thank you.
Okay, we've had two speak against the amended motion. And we've had one person speak, and Victor, correct me if I'm interpreting your position wrong, but we've had one person speak for the amended motion. Is there anyone else who would like to have discussion on the amended motion?
Can I just come off mute and say, Dorsal, that although I seconded the amendment motion, I am too in favor of the amended motion. I was wondering though, specifically when we have a special meeting, just because we have the special meeting to talk about these things, there's no voting going on, right? We're just trying to formulate how it's gonna work out and what it's gonna look like. So that's I just guess I need more clarification.
Thank you. And yes, it's always great to clarify too, if for those less familiar with Robert's rules, sometimes you might second a motion just because you want to vote against it. So a second is not actually even making the motion doesn't mean you're for it. You might be making the motion because you want to be against it. To clarify, to answer your question, Jaja, that's correct. At this point, all we're voting on is to have this discussion. And so some of this would enable further kind of discussion, just because one of the other questions to throw out there, tiptoeing around the line, is what is KCRHA staff capacity? You know, we just heard in that update that there were questions around like ensuring that, you know, people were in positions right now. So is our ally fully ready? And I want to say this is not taking away from them, but is our ally fully ready to go? Are they set and ready to do what we need them to do to accomplish this? But that is all I will say, because I'm facilitating the vote, and I apologize. That's already kind of slightly out of bounds, and my answer. So I'm going to call the vote before I get myself any more in trouble. Can we do a roll call vote on this one, if you'll indulge me, Catherine?
Yes, absolutely. Patricia Sam, will you restate
what clearly what's being voted on?
So,
Point of order.
yeah. The motion is to first to amend the original motion to include expansion of COC membership and COC board members
In a special meeting.
in a special meeting. And the second was done by Jean-Jacques Floyd. Okay. Are we good? All right, Patricia Sam,
She indicated yes with a thumbs up.
Can we have her come off or mute or
or she
on?
needs to say.
Yeah.
Let me see.
That wouldn't qualify. So. Unless she's having audio issues, but if she could
Like
type
in
it
the
in,
chat?
yeah, can you type it into the chat? If you have a vote, we'll come back to Dr. Singh.
Yes, Tamara Bauman,
Approve.
Jaja Floyd,
Approved.
Bella Irons,
Abstain.
Amaya Lenore.
Approved.
Approved. Sorry, could. Elizabeth Mopin,
Approved.
Dorsal Plants,
No.
Ruby Romero,
No.
Martha Sasarosi,
Approved.
Christina Sawicki,
Abstains.
abstain.
Mhm.
Victor Liu
Approve.
and Amy Thomas is absent still. Yes,
For the record,
and Dr. Sam,
she's got it in the chat there.
In the chat.
Okay.
Approve, I'm having audio issues.
okay, thank you. There are 7 yeses.
So motion passes.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And now we move into the second part of the vote, right?
I think, no, I think it was a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
I think at this point, we're gonna work with Kelsey and Catherine to get a Robert's Rules training going, because even I don't know everything.
I can hear good, but they can't hear me. Someone's not vote.
Oh, okay, we can hear you now.
Hear you now, Dr. Patricia. Thank you for the vote. Thank you for following through the procedures. We are a government board, so we are required to do that. Also, thank you for those who responded to the survey. We did a survey in anticipation of the vote moving forward, just because we wanted to give you all time to prepare your schedules. That was the reason why we did that. And Catherine, thank you so much for doing it. I believe the special meeting will be scheduled for May 14th at 1.
15th.
May 15th.
May 15th.
I thought it was Wednesday.
One moment. Oh, I apologize. May 14th, 1 to 2:30. Sorry, Dorsal.
Oh no, you are good. So hopefully everyone will be there to participate. For those of you in public who we're interested in having an opportunity for public feedback as well, to help us get more recruitment as well too. So it'll be a fun time for everyone to be there. All right, so we will keep moving along, and we're running a little bit behind, but we're on to the Continuum of Care Program Performance Review, the 2025 Q1 review. You all did some amazing work, and so did KCRHA, so it'll be a great way to end our meeting, hearing some of the great work that you all did.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Barely.
But we can hear you. All right, are you all seeing a slideshow or just a background?
We can see the slides.
You can see the slides. Excellent. I am not gonna do anything. So sorry, Ruby, you can look at my computer. Multiple screens and it gets a little funky. All right, so hello, everybody. Kelsey Beckmeyer, she, her pronouns, Continuum of Care Manager with KCRHA. Providing for you all an overview of COC programs performance in Q1 of 2025. So kind of the goals with these quarterly reviews that we'll be doing from here on out is to give a full review of the COC portfolio within all of the Seattle-King County COC. So these are inclusive of the programs where the direct grantee is KCRHA, as well as King County, and are the 5 nonprofit providers who hold direct grants. So this is the entire COC portfolio. We'll look at the total people who have been served by COC programs, overall performance based on some key system performance metrics, and then looking at performance, look at particular program types. So we'll do an overview and then kind of dig in by each different program type. So overall, looking at number of people served in the first quarter, the COC served total number, and this is by households. So there may be more people who were in large households. So this is by households. It was 3,644 households were served by COC programs. 66% of those households served were in permanent supportive housing, 19% in rapid rehousing, 8% in support services. Sorry, I just like lost my train of thought. 6% within transitional housing and 1% in safe havens. Overall performance based on some of our key metrics that we look at. Again, we had the 3,644 households that were served. An exit rate to permanent housing of those who exited, it was 96% of those who exited to permanent housing. Of that 96% who exited, we look at a 6-month return rate, and we had a 1% 6-month return rate overall.
the target is 3% or less. The total number of days from being referred to a resource through our coordinated entry system through moving in averages at about 90 days. And then unit utilization overall within that first quarter was 92% unit utilization. I'm going to dig down now into different program types, starting with permanent supportive housing. So permanent supportive housing, the household served was around 2,390 households. The exit rate for permanent supportive housing for individuals who exited to permanent housing was 98%. There's a 0% return rate for folks exiting from permanent housing. So we see 0% returning to homelessness within 6 months. The average referral, the timeline from referral to move-in is 53 days for our permanent supportive housing programs. And then unit utilization, we see at 93%. Whoops. Moved ahead a little fast. So rapid rehousing only. So looking at our rapid rehousing portfolio within COC programs, we saw 708 households that were served. The exit rate to permanent housing, so those who exit from their rapid rehousing enrollment to permanent housing in that first quarter, was 65%. The return rate to homelessness for those who exited lands at 0%. So 0% of households returned to, of the 65% who exited to permanent housing, this is the tracker for return to homelessness in 6 months, was 0%. The days, the timeline to being referred to a program to moving into housing was 135 days. And unit utilization is not tracked as a component of rapid rehousing because that's not how there's no set number of units. It's about an available number of households to be able to serve. I did want to provide a little bit of more detailed information around exit rates to permanent housing, because for rapid rehousing, it is low for that first quarter. The target is about 80% of people who will exit to permanent housing. And this first quarter saw a low rate of 5%, or not 5%, 65%, pardon me. And just wanted to show here, we're looking at a small snapshot. So that shows some variable change in those percentage rates. For example, we look at our Hickman House project that had 2 exits, one of which exited to permanent housing. So the other was an exit to homelessness or temporary housing, so non-permanent housing, which drops it to 50%. So there's some small portions of numbers that create that drop to 65%. Looking at just a snapshot of a quarter versus a longer period of time in a year. So we'll look at this progressively. So when we look at data from next quarter, it will build upon this information so we can look at, are there improvements being made? So we see that we do have some programs that have lower rates. Our DBSA rapid rehousing program had 3 exits, 2 of which were to permanent housing. So there is one that was exited to either homelessness or temporary housing. One thing that KCRJ staff on our emergency and housing stability division is working really closely with our DV providers and our youth providers around spending and performance, noting that some of our lower exit rates to permanent housing are seen in our DV program. So the DVSA rapid rehousing, regional rapid rehousing for DV, Hickman House is a DV program, and our youth program. So putting some particular focus on providing some technical assistance and support through kind of listening sessions and targeted technical assistance. I'm gonna move us to transitional housing. So in the period of the first quarter of 2025, we saw 209 households who were served. We saw an exit rate to permanent housing at 76%. Here we see a bit higher of a 6-month return rate to homelessness at 4.3%. Referrals are done directly into transitional housing, so there's not a timeline where we look at time from referral into move-in. And then unit utilization was at 80%. So I want to give a little bit of context for some of the numbers that we see here. So the return rate was a higher return rate of that 4.3%. This was one person of 23 people who exited to permanent housing that returned to homelessness. So just want to provide that context about numbers, because 4.3% looks like a higher percentage, and that's one individual, one household. So in a period of time, we have small numbers that create higher percentages. And we'll again continue to look at this as it builds throughout the remainder of the 2025. The unit utilization, we do see that was impacted by some programs closing in our youth and adult space, which brought units offline. And we also saw some transitional housing units be offline due to more intensive repairs that have been needed. So that's part of why we saw an 80% unit utilization. And then for our safe havens, we saw 46 people served with a 90% exit rate to permanent housing. The safe havens saw a 0% return rate to homelessness for those who exited to permanent housing. This is also a direct referral into a program, so referral to move-in is moot. And then we saw a 92% utilization rate in the first quarter. Our support services only, so these are our programs that just are not offering a housing unit, but are doing just more supportive services. But we saw 291 households served. From those who were engaged in those support services, who exited from those services, upon exit, 91% were exiting and had permanent housing. There was a 1% return rate within the first quarter. There again is not a tracking of referral to move-in, that's moot in this situation. And there's also not units, so there's no unit utilization that is tracked. So coming back again to look at the overall portfolio, because we do look at our system performance based on individual program types, as well as overall how our system is performing. So overall performance of the COC portfolio at this moment in time is decently strong. We are either meeting or exceeding all of the kind of markers of what is deemed like target rates. KCRHA has noted areas of improvement, particularly with some DV programs and youth programs, and have had staff actively working with providers to provide technical assistance and support to kind of navigate some of the challenges that programs have highlighted that they are experiencing or have been experiencing in this first quarter. So we are hopeful to see just ongoing movement to help folks continue to stabilize in our community.
Kelsey, this is Christina.
Yes, Christina.
Are you telling me we only served 3,644 people from January to March? That seems low and confusing to me.
That is a great point of clarification, Christina. So this is for only programs that receive COC funding. So this is not the entire system. So it's only for COC funded programs that are permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and there's 2 support service programs and 2 safe havens. So it's a focused number of programs, not the entire system.
Again, this is Christina. That seems kind of low. So what you're saying is for the housing spaces we pay for through COC dollars, we only are serving 3,644 family units with that money we get from the COC?
The COC funds are currently serving 3,644 people from January through March. Yeah. And would welcome, what are some other kind of questions that you have that you would like us to answer when we do a review in the next quarter as well?
This
So
is
we can
Christina. Oh, again. Is there a number that goes with that household, which I know it's not going to be that, but is there like, we would say like, of those 3,644 people, it cost us $250 per household. Is it broken down into there?
We can get that information. I don't have that right now, but that is information that we can provide generally. I'll do the best I can to get as much information as possible. Yeah. But that's a great piece to note, is to get some of the like cost per household information.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Kelsey, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I can see you all better. Just that helps my, yeah. Okay, hi. And then I can see some of the chat questions too.
I have a couple of just two quick questions and then one kind of larger question. The first being, so, and I imagine we do, but for COC fund contracts, do we have a expectation for how long a provider has to go from empty to like between, especially with the transitional housing? Like I understand repairs has a unit out, but are they contractually obligated to have that unit repaired and filled within, because the state recently made changes to their contracts along those lines, and I'm curious what ours is.
Yep. COC does not dictate any target number regarding that piece. It's overall utilization. When we look at the annual performance report, there is a snapshot in time of 4 months in the year to look at how many folks were in units at a given number of time. I do know a lot of our PSH providers are having to meet that state requirement just because of the braided funding and requirements there. So there are pieces that used to be wanting to see units filled within 90 days, and changes that are being made with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission is lowering that to 30 days. A piece that we also know is that can be challenging for our PSH providers at times, particularly if there are more intense repairs that need to be made. I anticipate with the current climate and tariffs and shipping, we may continue to see challenges regarding construction, repairs, etc. So, you know, some unknowns.
Thank you. Yeah. I might have more questions on that one, but I'll keep going. So leading into my final question, why are you only looking at 6 months for the rate of return to homelessness?
That's the HUD metric. So that is the metric that we track in HMIS, and that's the information we have at this moment in time.
Because I knew at one point when I was doing HMIS data entry, my contract, it was 12 months. So HMIS had the capacity to do a year return to homelessness rate. I'd be curious to know why we would have turned that feature off. Because leading into my next question, so 65% of 780, just quick math, that's roughly what? Oh, crap. I lost it. That's 460 households. And we're saying in 6 months, 460 households did not return. Go ahead.
Let me correct, so that's how many households exited to permanent housing from transitional housing. And we had that in a 6-month time period with transitional housing, 4.3% return to homelessness.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And the data metrics that we own, that's not my world, so I can't tell you whether or not that is a turned on feature or not, or if we would need to code it. So I will defer to others and try and get you some information there. Yeah. And I think next was Bella.
Thanks. That's actually what I was going to ask about. Have these guidelines about what is being presented to us, what information is obviously being put out in public record? I feel a little bit of kind of shock and dismay happening right now. And I also am feeling like there maybe isn't a clear expectation or understanding of what these figures are supposed to be presented to us. I'm trying to figure out where the foundation for this is. Does KCRHA have we looked at and diagnosed with you the data points that we know that we need you to update us with? Because that is my first and foremost question. Like, how are these data points being addressed? Is it only from HUD's perspective, or has this been something that the COC and KCRHA have said, we are going to give you these updates on these figures, and they're based off of, that HUD requires them, the state requires them, whatever it is that we have established as a requirement? Because like I said, I'm feeling that there's a disconnect for these numbers that have showed up, and I'm trying to figure out why that's happening. Thank you.
Yep, so the information put together is based on system performance metrics and key metrics that are looked at for our system and how it's performing. That's just redundant. Based on HUD expectations and what we report on to the federal government. So this is based on information that is asked for us to track and monitor, both in contracts as well as in reporting that we submit to HUD.
My hand is up over here.
I appreciate that. And I'm still wondering where this disconnect is. Is it because we don't have this historical reporting that's happening consistently, that these numbers are somehow, disorienting for us? Or
Yep, so there hasn't been a review of performance for the board in this year. So this is the first presentation on performance that the board is seeing in 2025 on system performance on the COC portfolio.
For just one quarter.
For just one quarter.
okay, but are these data points drastically different than what has been being presented in 2024? And maybe that
I would need to come back and do a comparison. We can do that and provide that. I believe in the system performance report that Daniel did last month or the month before, there were some comparisons of 24 and 25 or 23 and 24. So that can be something to incorporate, is looking at those pieces. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any further questions, Bella?
I just think that if we don't have clear guidelines for what it is that we're getting presented, because we're asking you questions, Kelsey, and you don't have that information, and you're also thinking about who else had it, like Daniel, maybe moving forward, we should ask for that supporting documentation to be ready when we have these presentations. And maybe that will eliminate, any discrepancies that people are feeling, because you're able to recall them. So they're obviously there. I just feel like maybe we should probably have that supporting information to pull from immediately. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, just quickly to touch on that, the System Performance Committee has the HUD measures pretty much. So I think that that's what we've been doing is trying to educate the board on that same front. And I think that we do have resources that we could send out to maybe or something to show them. But I hear you. I think that is important to make sure we're communicating correctly. I also had a couple of questions about the presentation. So could we see in the future possibly how many people that receive supportive services that are in housing? Is that a metric that we could ever get? So like versus those receiving supportive services and not in housing? Because I'm not sure if that's a measurement that we could do. Because there was no returns to homelessness or units or anything, and I'm trying to think.
So it's there, those are specific program types. I'll have to look and see if that's a clear data point that can be captured. We're also running this looking at based on those consistent performance measures. But we'll capture that in information.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know that. I think that would be a crucial piece of information to have. The other thing I wanted to say was about the Safe Haven. Seems like it's really performing well. I don't know if that's maybe because there's a lower amount of people in the program. It's a carryover program, if I remember correctly, from previous projects or programs. Can you tell us a little bit more about exactly what a Safe Haven is? I'm so sorry.
Yep. Yep. So a safe haven is a very low barrier type of permanent housing. It's a permanent supportive housing type. That's very particular. They are not funded anymore. So we have two that were grandfathered in. Safe havens are focused on serving those who are literally homeless and have a severe mental illness. Okay. So it's a kind of long-standing program type. They are capped at having 25 beds available. There is no set time limit on safe havens and enrollments and staying in a safe haven. And it's for folks who may not otherwise really engage in services. So the intent is to be very, very low barrier and offer space for individuals.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that. And I just want to flag, we have 7 minutes left. So Jaja, Amaya, and Martha, rapid fire, go. No, I'm just kidding. Jaja,
Rapid
go ahead.
fire. Before I go, I noticed Catherine's hand was up before mine. Did she get her?
Nope, that was me.
Oh,
It
okay,
was
got
for
you.
Ruby.
Okay, so my question is simple. It's about the numbers like Christina was talking about. In that quarter, it's just based on our numbers of people we're dealing with, like what you already showed us. And so I'm wondering, that number is only low because of the capacity of each program to house that many people. So it's all about the housing.
It's the number of units available, the amount of rental assistance available. Yep. So I think that that's definitely some further information that we can provide, is looking at some of those costs per household and program costs, as well as turnover rates of units. Yep.
And do we have housing navigators?
Our COC funding does not fund navigators. Our system, some parts of our system have housing navigators. Our youth space does, family spaces, but that is not something that is directly funded with COC dollars.
Got you. Thank you so much.
Maya?
Yeah, so I was just curious about why the days referred to move-in for rapid rehousing was almost like 5 months as compared to like everything else. And is there anything we're doing to kind of like shorten the amount of time that people are having to be, in limbo before they get permanently housed?
Yeah, that is a great question. So a couple of things that we know and kind of hear regularly from providers is when folks are initially referred to rapid rehousing, there have been a number of households with really high amounts of debt. So having to navigate lowering debt, finding units in the private market as well, and finding units that are affordable, rent reasonable, and all of kind of the conglomerate of those things together, creating longer amounts of time And to Elizabeth's point, yeah, rapid rehousing is not always so rapid. Because of the having to locate a unit and then finding that there are, you know, credit needs that a landlord is wanting, debts that need to be, you know, settled. So there are a number of barriers put in place by properties that may need to be navigated, and that can be unknown upon initial referral. And we are seeing in our system more and more households that have very high numbers of debt, in part being impacted from COVID. Does that answer your question, Amaya?
That is really perfect. Thank you. And I think this is really going to help me also in the Built for Zero rooms. This is something that'll really help a lot. Thank you.
Hope to hear about that from you soon. Martha, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to share from my experience and recollection. So just thank you for bringing the COC specific data. From what I recall, we may have looked at more like system-wide information. And one of the things that I recall from like a high-level debrief of how competitive we were in the COC competitions was that our system performance, the score we received for our like COC performance had come down. And so understanding for our continuum of care funded programs, what our performance is looking like and tracking that in more like real time, I really appreciate, because I don't recall us doing that before, where we were really like honing in on the COC specific projects. So for me, I think this is the first time I'm seeing us focus on it in this way. And so I really appreciate having that data in a more like transparent kind of real time way. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Martha. Dorsal? Final
Just really quick.
question?
I'd love to see if we could potentially gather some of this information to think about agenda items for the remainder of the year for us. You know, Los Angeles has reached a point where they are doing, they're going out to encampments, and literally within 4 hours, somebody's signing a lease for a home through their master leasing program. So like there are other people who have put the rapid in some of these programs. So it'd be great if we could start bringing some of those people here and kind of learning from them.
That's a great idea. And maybe we'd have to fly down to LA or something. That would be fun, wouldn't it? I don't know if the spending will, yeah, we got 1 minute. So quickly, is there any community update? Oh, Bella, I see that your hand did pop up. We got 1 minute on the call, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add to that and bring us back around to the information that was shared with us earlier today, and that feeling of where we're coming from, that interpersonal relationship to data and figures that's directly affecting people under our care, under our advisory. I think that that's really important to keep a perspective on, so that we can also continue to do that work and honor where people are coming from, even within this board, emotionally. I think that it's a very strong connection point, at least for me. And I, for one, would like to continually see those data points so that it keeps us driven in the direction that we do need to make change for. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I would echo that, and I think that's the plan, right, Kelsey? Yep, awesome. We're great. We're grateful for that, to have that be a part of our regular updates. So thank you so much, everybody, today for this great meeting. I don't think we have any community updates other than the COC convening is next month. We're gonna have the special board meeting next week. And is the governing board meeting next week as well? Or is it the following week? It might be.
Yes, the 15th.
It's on the 15th, 10 to noon.
That's why I got the 15.
Yeah, that's where you got the 15th from. And then the next thing I would say is just keep an eye out for the convening agendas and save the date. We'll see you guys next month for our regular board meeting. Whatever the first Wednesday of the month is.
January 4th.
June 4th.
June 4th. June 4th. We're going back to January. Thank you guys.
Okay.
With that,
Bye.
in January, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Bye.